Rob Gray, CycloneFanatic.com, joins us on 365 Sports. Again, if you did not hear this earlier, Paul Catalina has been on vacation for the last week. He'll be back on Monday. Craig is out today. He'll be back on Monday, too. Garrett Ross and I running here at the mothership on 101 Elm and MLK in Waco, a mile or so away on the west side of 35 from McLean Stadium. Rob, thank you very much for being a part of the show. So how loaded and reloaded is Iowa State and Matt Campbell?
First of all, thanks for having me, Smokey. I'd say extremely on both counts. Now, what that translates to from a win-loss record is always a bit of an adventure for the Cyclones, as we've seen in recent years. But I think what ESPN, Bill Conley has Iowa State as the second most returning production, 85% or so. However, they measure that on both sides of the ball, or just offensively. Expectations extremely high, given that so many players are coming back who started on the offense and the defense and in special teams. So, they're feeling great. And this, once again, second year in a row, new look Big 12.
Yeah, it is. And now, I forgot who it was, but somebody was mentioning us with Matt Campbell. It might have been Paul when he was talking about Iowa State. He goes, they never seem to string things together, but he actually had 5, I think it was, consecutive winning seasons, and then they blew a tire. But it seemed like when no one expected them, they came right back. And, of course, last year were a nice surprise. Are they a team that is better when they're under the radar or not?
Well, that's a good question. They'll tell you what any staff tells you, that they don't pay attention to what happens, quote unquote, outside their walls and all that. And that may or may not be true on a collective basis. But certainly for individuals, you wonder whether that stuff creeps in. Even Brock Purdy's senior season would be labeled a disappointment after the second 9-win season in program history as a senior with him and Charlie Kohler now with the Ravens, Jake Hummel now with the Rams. A loaded roster. That team just went 7-6, lost the bowl game to, I believe it was Clemson that year. So there might be something to that, but I think it's more the fact that, to fall into another Campbell trope or a cliche, however you want to call it, winning in the quote unquote margin is important for them. And they were really bad at that in the 2023 season. 2 seasons ago, and they were much better at it last season. And I think that's where they've got to be. Even though they return all this talent and production, it still is not the type of high-end 4- and 5-star talent that you see across a lot of Big 12 rosters, let alone, the elite programs in the country.
So Matt Campbell, the Big 12, we were bringing this up the other day. The Big 12 has Leipold. People wanted him. Obviously, Kleiman. People wanted him. After 21, people wanted Aranda. And the last couple of years have not gone very well. These are guys who have done well before they got into the higher level of college football, as did Matt Campbell. Isn't that pretty cool that they're all around the same area and they're right next to each other and they're having this kind of success?
Well, I think it is. And then you see the ups and downs with each one. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that Kleiman, fans were clamoring for him to be, dismissed, because they were struggling a little bit in Manhattan. And obviously, as you mentioned, in your neck of the woods, Dave Aranda has not had the level of success he, extended, from previous eras. But, the last couple of seasons haven't gone as well. Matt Campbell, at Iowa State, it's always, doing more of less. He's had more success certainly than most coaches, maybe any coach in Iowa State history. He's closing in on the all-time wins mark Dan McCarney holds. But, it's really cool because they're, a lot of them are young coaches. I mean, heck, for people from my area, a couple of them, at least one has Iowa roots. Kleiman at Kansas State came from Waterloo, was on the Northern Iowa staff. And then, Campbell came in, believed, created a different kind of culture at Iowa State where they didn't feel the ceiling was just getting to a bowl game, but the ceiling was competing for a Big 12 title. And they did play in at least one of those games, lost by a touchdown to Oklahoma a few years back. So it's really neat, and it's really kind of neat to see how these coaches also navigate those ebbs and flows, the ups and downs that are inevitable in programs that just are almost any program that's outside of a handful.
So let me get to Iowa State. I mentioned they have a bunch of people back. You've mentioned they have to do it a certain way. They're not going to get the 4- and 5-star guys, and a lot of teams in the Big 12 aren't going to do that very often. It's a workmanlike, and sometimes when you say this, it's a workmanlike, people with chips on their shoulder. Then that sometimes people think, well, you're saying there's no talent. There's talent there, but it just seems like this is what works best for them, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the blueprint that they followed was, find some under the radar guys. Don't even worry about the stars they have. Of course, many of them would probably generally grade out to consensus 3 stars. Some of the guys that they've turned into pros, like Brock Purdy, like Charlie Kohler, like Jake Como, like Anthony Johnson. Now, a number of guys, much more than in recent years. Pin your hopes on that. They do get guys to the transfer portal. They've had some successes there, but you don't have the kind of NIL money at Iowa State that you have with a lot of the bigger, programs, especially when you're talking SEC Big Ten. So that's the blueprint that they've tried to follow. And so far, I mean, in terms of relative success at Iowa State, it's been unprecedented from Matt Campbell. I mean, for them to become a team that week in, week out, nobody says they don't have a chance. Even in their previous 9-win season with Dan McCarney, there were a few games where you knew they didn't have a chance. In that 2000 season, they didn't have a chance against Oklahoma. They didn't have a chance against Kansas State that year, and it showed. But with Campbell, they pretty much have a chance week in and week out. And that's the unprecedented thing he's been able to do at Iowa State, and that's the formula, the blueprint that they're sticking with in terms of trying to get back beyond 7 wins and get back into that 8-9 win echelon they've been in recent years.
If they don't have if they don't end up better than 7-6 or whatever, what went wrong?
Well, usually it's the special teams failures, inability to make plays in the key moments. I mean, that 2 seasons ago, 6 losses by, a touchdown or less. And you could point to areas in those games where there were just critical breakdowns. The team basically, I would tell people that if you made a list, you cannot do these things if you want to win the game. Iowa State checked every single box, whether it be 5 or 6 boxes, in virtually every loss they had. And, that's for a team that emphasizes, a program that emphasizes how much you have to pay attention to detail, how much you need to win in the quote-unquote margins in order to have success. That was a glaring, chronic breakdown for the team. And then it started to revert back last year. They won a few more close games. It started to do more of those things, executing in those key moments. And, we'll see how this group does. I mean, you got the reigning, Big 12 offensive freshman of the year, Rocco Beck, back at quarterback. He was courted by significant NIL money that he rebuffed in order to stay for less at Iowa State because he likes what he's got there. He knows what he's got there. And, again, it's always a real season for Iowa State. No matter what the expectations are, and they're very high this season, you just never know what you're going to get because, again, the margin for error is so slim.
Does everything kind of set the table with what happens in at Iowa in week 2?
I feel like that's important, but then again, 2 seasons ago, they went and beat Iowa for the first time in a while in a close game, one of the rare close games they won. And then after that, they could not, just to save their lives, execute in key moments to win a game. So I feel like, you start with North Dakota. All the Dakota schools now at the FCS level, they're all kind of sneaky good because for some reason they all have a bunch of money. Even not just North Dakota State, South Dakota State, which is all been champion. So that'll be a bit of a test because they always struggle. It feels like against Northern Iowa, another FCS opponent in state. So we'll see how that goes. I feel like if they play well at Iowa and are able to produce offensively to some extent and have a game plan that tries to exploit Iowa's weaknesses instead of playing to its strengths defensively, I think that'll tell a lot. New offensive coordinator and Taylor Mauser after Nate Scheelhaas was 1 year in and now he's off and on the LA Rams staff. So it's more how they call the game, how they play the game, I think, against Iowa that'll kind of set the table for what comes, in another non-conference game, then, of course, Big 12 play.
Yeah, and you don't know, because the Big 12, you know this, you never know who's going to jump up out of nowhere. It was Baylor in 21 when you couldn't really see that coming because the year before they were 2-7 COVID. And then TCU not only jumped up but played for the national title despite how it ended. But at Houston and then Baylor, does that kind of have a soft opening type look for them to maybe be able to get out whatever happens with Iowa to jump off to a nice start?
Yeah, it feels like it, but then again, I mean, you never know. I mean, like you said, I mean, they're in Waco. When you don't expect it, sometimes, you got enough talent there that you can catch lightning in a bottle and sustain that for a couple of years before there's another hiccup. And yeah, I've been kind of surprised that the Bears have been down the last couple of years, given Aranda's pedigree and just the trajectory of the program in the previous several seasons. But that it does set up pretty well for Iowa State, especially when you consider other things. Like the Kansas game will be, on paper, at least a neutral site game at Arrowhead Stadium. A lot of Iowa State fans go to Kansas City, as we've seen for the men's and women's basketball tournaments. I know Kansas is on the rise with Leipold, but there will be a lot of Iowa State fans in that stadium as well. So that's not a true road game. That helps a lot. It was already a season in which they have 5 home instead of 4 on the road. So pretty favorable setup all the way. But you're right. At least on paper, it looks like a soft start. But, that remains to be seen, as we often know, every topsy-turvy Big 12 season.
What are your thoughts about the story that was a week ago about the Big 12 looking at naming rights and then also the possibility of a relationship with a private equity firm?
I really would. I like the idea of naming rights a heck of a lot more than throwing your lot in with private equity. I think there's a lot of unknowns there, a lot of things that would remain behind the scenes. I feel like it would be pretty murky for people to try to navigate. And, what are with naming rights, it's not that different than just selling the stadium's naming rights. Right? It's like, hey, we just cast a check because All-State or somebody wants to be the All-State Conference, the All-State Big 12 Conference, or, whomever. I feel like that should have more legs if it doesn't already. But, I mean, I do give Fred Yormark a lot of credit to know that, hey, the Big 12 wants to be the third conference now that the SEC and TV has helped them. The SEC and Big Ten have really distanced themselves as the top two. And you look at every approach, you look at every possibility, and I give them credit for that. But I'm a bit leery of the private equity thing. I think the naming rights thing, if you can get it, especially given the settlements of the lawsuits and how many athletic departments are going to face significant budget shortfalls. You can take a chunk out of that and to help make up for those shortfalls. I mean, why not do it?
Yeah. There's a reason people have to find more, what I've been saying, you got to find more scratch. You got to find more dollar bills or quarters on the corner. You got to, they have to find a way. And it might be unique, which sometimes people go, ooh, and yet, ooh was really everything that's happened in college football the last 3 to 5 years, from realignment, people leaving because they wanted more money, and they also wanted to play against bigger stadiums against better teams overall. But really, a lot of this is forced because of ooh. And so what will be interesting is if somebody like the Big 12, whoever it is that becomes the name of the conference, if at some point one of the larger of the two biggest conferences were to attach somebody to their name, and then it would be, oh, okay, that's fine. I think it's proactive. Whether or not it works or not remains to be seen.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I mean, the quote-unquote bigger conferences, the ones that have found the most favor financially, obviously, they can, lift up their nose and, pretend to be this or that. This has all been, this has all been very unseemly, frankly, from all the ways conferences have ended. I mean, excuse me. Iowa State's athletic director, James Pollard, made a point. Iowa State does this tailgate tour every May where they go to smaller towns and go across the state. And you made a point when you asked about some of these things that, when you talk about what should happen or what may happen, you just don't know, and you have to be open to all possibilities. And at this point was, who at this point, I don't know, a year ago or 2 years ago, but it's not that the Pac-12 would not be a thing anymore, that the Pac-12 was gone, destroyed. And did the Big 12 destroy it? No, the Big 12 got people from that conference, gave them a lifeboat because it helps the Big 12. That was a TV. Well, the Pac-12 did a lot of it to itself in terms of, not, re-upping on its TV deal, trying to get something better, not going streaming, and then saying, oh, whoops. I mean, that a lot of it was self-inflicted, but a lot of it was this ew factor that you talked about that's been permeating college athletics for a while now, and maybe forever. I mean, just under the surface rather than more in your face. So, yeah, you got to do what you got to do. From the Big 12 perspective, when you're lagging behind the SEC and the Big 10, and you've got, who knows what's going to happen in the ACC, given all the defectors potentially there, the headliners, of course, Florida State, et cetera.
Yeah.
You gotta throw everything on the wall and see what sticks.
All right, last thing. Were you in Iceland, or you just love pictures of Iceland?
I was in Iceland with my daughter. My daughter likes to travel. My wife hates to travel, so all my international travel that wasn't solo, I've done with my daughter. My son is starting to come around. He's 15. I might be able to take a couple trips with him. But, yeah, went to Iceland. Cold, extremely windy, even in the summer. Had a giant snowstorm in the north. But, my God, you'll see so many incredible waterfalls. By the end of a week or 10 days, you'll be like, I don't need to see another waterfall for 3 months at least, or a few years. So I was in Iceland, and I would recommend everyone go there if they have a chance. Yeah,
I saw the pictures. We just put one of them up. Man, it's just so beautiful. I know, like you said, it's cold, whatever, but it's just so beautiful and cool that you were able to do that with your daughter. Thank you very much. Rob, thank you. We'll have you on more, if that's okay, talking Iowa State football and other things as well.
Yeah, sounds good. Appreciate the time, Smokey, and look forward to talking down the road.
Rob Gray from Cyclones Fanatic. Chris Williams is the one that said, hey,